Hello explorers and welcome to another video. Today we're going to talk about Sapper. Sapper is a very interesting little framework that uses Svelte but can build an application for you. So the framework is actually a starting point where you can build your application into this framework. It has a service worker, it has already code splitting, it can handle static sites and dynamic sites, it has some REST API things in it, and so on. So it has a lot of things built in. And I'm not going to be able to cover everything in this video, but I will cover the most important parts, and I will be very brief with some parts that I have covered in other videos. So first off, when you run this and build a version of it, you can see that you have 100% performance, 92 accessibility, so there is some improvements that you can do that there. Best practices is at 71, and that's because I'm not running it on an HTTP version, so HTTPS server. So if I put it online on an HTTPS server, it would be at around 90, and SEO is at 100 as well. So this framework has a lot of potential out of the box to follow the new web standards and actually perform well online. So when you have installed this and got it running, you will be greeted by this great Borat picture where everything is high five, you got it working, great success. And this is a development server that have a client part, a server part, and a service worker. And you have about page here. This notes page is something that I implemented inside with this framework just to get to know it a little bit better and to actually work with it. And then you have some blog part here that you can read more about Sapper. And this blog part you can actually export as a fully static page with all static HTML references. So it will actually build the project if you build it, and then go and visit all the internal links to create a static version of your page. The new thing that I build here will not work in a static mode because it actually has some data in the backend. But it's interesting that you can actually use Sapper to build static pages as well as dynamic pages, depending on your needs. Now I have talked a little bit about the framework here. You can see that I can add notes, delete notes, and edit notes, and they will be saved for future reference. So let's look at some code here. If we start off here in the little project, you can see that this project have a Sapper there. It's where it actually builds everything. It builds the developer server, it puts the actual build of the application there, and also export directory. So everything that will be built by Svelte will be put in the Sapper directory here. You have a Cypress directory for unit tests. I will not cover that in this video because we don't have time. We have some static things here, and those will be preloaded when needed in the service worker. So that could be good to know that here you can put static things that you will need on your page. And then we have the sources directory here. We'll go further into that later on. You have package and Webpack. I chose to use Webpack for this project, but you can run rollup as well. So there's a rollup example as well. And if I just type npm run dev, I will have a development server that has the client, server, and service worker, and those will be reloaded and rebuilt every time I do code changes. So let's go into the source directory now. So here we see that I have some template. I have the service worker. So this is the service worker designed for you, but you can add extra functionality here if you want. And I have not been looking into this more than I know that it actually works. So you can have your site offline if you like without this service with this service worker. The template here is a little bit interesting because this is actually what your site will be showing to the world. So here you have some start, then you have some base things for Sapper. So these are the base dependencies that you will put here. Then it will put some styles, it will put a header segment, and that's something that you put into every component or every page that you will render. And then you will have Sapper scripts at the end. So every script tag that you put into your different pages will be put here, and you also have a Sapper HTML element, so every other HTML element will be put here. If we look at the server part, it's a very simple server here. So this is a node server, it uses Polka. In this case I have added this body parser JSON here because I wanted to build a REST API, and taking the body and actually making JSON of it was a really good idea to actually handle the response from the server. And the client part is also very simple here. You just say that you have a Sapper application, you want to start it, and you want to put it in a place called Sapper. So if we look in the template here, we have this div here, Sapper, and everything will be put into that div. And the interesting part here is that Sapper will actually pre-build and preload some data. So when you download the page or visit the page, it will be pre-rendered on the server side, but it will change over to a dynamic mode when it actually hits your browser. So you have both the pre-rendered part and the dynamic part in one package without doing any extra work, and that is really nice. So the main or the big part of the application is the different routes that you can visit in this application. So here we have all the routes. Index, Svelte is the actual index page that you will visit if you just go to the site. So this is the landing page. And we have some styles up here, not that important. In the head, we just put a title, and then you have this great success, high five, and then some extra text. So this is the Borat page, which is the home page of this application. Then we have the about page, not much to that either. We have some title, about site, and so on. And then we have an error page, so _error Svelte. This will handle if it actually any errors are displayed on the page. So if something is missing and so on, you can see it here. So if we switch back and I say notes 2, I will get a 404. So that's the error page, how to display errors. And here we have a head with the status. We will put an H1 with the status, the message, and if we have a stack trace, we will put it down here. So this is also a good way that you can actually design things and show off different error designs if your site ends up in a bad state. And this is the layout page. It's also very short. We have a script segment up here with the navigation. We will give a segment to the navigation, and that's which page we actually visited. We have some styling. We will use this nav component here, and then we have the main down here with a slot. So this is the main page, and the slot is where it will put everything else in this application. So if we visit index Svelte, for instance, in the main, this will be shown. So great success and so on, that will be shown in the main slot. It will be put in there. So that's the layout. So if you want to change this up, you can actually do a lot of extra work in this layout section. So this will work together with your template. So the template will be used for the whole site. The layout will be used for different sections in your routes. So this layout here is for this route part and also for everything underneath. And if I wanted a different layout in my notes, I will create a layout page or layout Svelte in my notes directory here as well. And then that would have a different layout than my main layout, but I haven't done that. Components, it's just a normal Svelte component up here with a nav where we have the different segments, and if we are on the About page, we will show that as selected. An interesting thing to see here that every href is just a standard href to a standard page. So you don't do anything extra. You don't put in any extra code or any extra strange link or anything like that. It's a simple anchor with a simple href, and the site will actually work by just going to that directory. So that removes a lot of the magic and extra dependencies of special components and so on. And if we look into the blog here, we have this index, and here we see a very interesting function up here. It's a preload function. It will take this blog JSON. So if we look at the blog JSON, let's see if we can find that. No, it's actually, it will fetch the JSON response from the directory blog, and that will give you some posts will be shown here. So this will actually call the endpoint blog.json, and this endpoint is actually this index.json file that we have over here. So if we call that and we call the get function, we will go to this here and we will return 200 application JSON in the content type, and then the contents here. And the content will be a lot of information from the posts, and we will map every post to the title and slug. So we will get the title and slug of each post. And the post JSON over here, if we look at that, you see that this is actually a JSON with everything in this blog. So what is Sapper? And here we have the slog for what is Sapper and the HTML that will be shown. So these are the different blog posts. So it will take these, it will export those as posts. Here we will import those posts. We will get the title and slug from those posts and return that if we ask for the get command or method against blog, because the directory is called blog.json, because this is the JSON part or the back-end server part of this directory. So that's what we get here. We will change it over to a JSON, get those posts, and return those posts. And this preload here is something that then will be put into this page as a preloaded value. And if I export the let posts here, it will be available for me on this page, because I have said that anything outside of this page can send in a variable called posts. And up here we preload this posts variable that we later will be put into this page, which is very nifty, because then you can just render the blog here, recent posts, you do a for each over each posts, and you put in the post here with the slog, and this is just a simple href, and then the post with the title down here. So this is everything you need to do to actually have something that you can click on. And this rel prefetch here is something that makes Sapper actually load the page if you hover over the link. So if we go back to notes here, we can look in the console, we go back to blog. We can go to network, and if I hover over Sapper here, it should have preloaded that. And we can see if it will preload any of these. Maybe it's because it already is a static page. But as you see, it's a very interesting dynamic feature here that you can actually preload things and have a faster execution. So going through this blog here is very fast. You don't have to wait for each page. So let's go back to the code again. So this was the blogging interface, and we have already talked about JSON.js. But as you saw, when we went to a specific blog post, it actually went to what is Sapper, which is the slug for this page. So we looked here in this index.json, we will go to blog/slug. So this is something that we want to visit here. And we have two very strangely named files up here. One called hard bracket slug end of a hard bracket or angle brackets, and then .svelte. And this slug here will become a variable because it's named with these brackets around it. And that means that if you call this page, or if you're looking for something that you want to show, and if there is something called slug, or if it has some hard brackets here, we can use that as a variable info to this Svelte file. So let's just think that the parameter slug will be an input parameter to this page, and this preload function we have up here take parameters, and on this parameters object we will have this slug that we can use here, and then we can actually call the blog slug.json. And as we see here, we also have a slug.json.js file, so that will return the data from this endpoint. So we can get that data, we can change it over to JSON, return that it's as 200, or we will return an error if that page is not visible. And as before, we will put that into a post variable. That post variable will then be available to the page down here, and we will remove the styling here. We see that we will just take the post and send out the HTML. We have a little tag over here to actually handle HTML content and render it correctly. And up here we have the H1 for the title and also the title in the head. If we look at the JSON, it's not that complicated either. It will go through the posts JS up here and put it into a lookup map. So each post will be put in the lookup map with a slug, and then the post as a stringified JSON. So that will be creating a map with a lot of data in it. And if we call get here, the get function, we will take the parameters of the request, find the slug down here. We will look up that slug, see if it is visible. If it is, we will look it up and put that back. If it's not, then we will return 404, and we will stringify this message not found. So that's all you need to do to actually create some blog thing. And as I said, you can export this as a totally static page if you like. So what have I built then? If I know how everything works here, I wanted to see if I can create a notes application where you can add notes, edit notes, and delete notes. And here is my little application. It's some code. First up, we have a preload up here. It will call the notes JSON as we saw before, and will return notes in this preload stage up here. That will be exported so we can actually use the notes down here. If we close that script and styling, you can see that we have a title here. I have added description and keywords for SEO purposes. And I have also added this MUI script. This is for material design UI. that I will be using down here, and I also added this CSS down here, so that will be loaded last. And in this, I just put the ID of the note up here on the container for the note. When I go through each of the notes, I will create an input field for the note. I will have a function on keyup that will update the note. I will also put the text in the note over here. The delete function just uses delete note. And we have create note. And I have done some cheating down here, I believe, because as I use this ID up here, I could have put that as a data field on each of the ones that are interested in this field, but I just use that if I am on this node, I will look for the parent and find the ID there. And when I do deletes, I will look for the parent and find the ID there. So if we look at my script here, we can first off look at fetch data. This will actually get a method. And in this case, get is not a good option because get can't have any data. So I can't actually use get as an option here. But this function will just do a fetch and put some extra parameters so we know that we will use coarse and no cache and same origin and so on. So it's just to hide some implementation up here or just to centralize some implementation details. And if we need to fetch the notes, I can just do a fetch because then I don't need all the extra parameters because they are implied. And here I will just change it over to JSON, take the notes and put that into my notes variable up here. So if I fetch notes, I will replace these notes up here. I have an update timeout down here, so it's actually doesn't do this update all the time for every key press. It will do it a little bit less often. I can actually move this down to the update function. It's just so we don't get too much noise on the network. And if I have this fetch note, we already talked about that. Create note, it's just a post to the backend with an empty text, and then the result back is a JSON. I will put that result into the notes. So that's a very simple function for create. Update note. Then I will call this timeout just so I don't spam the network too much. And if it has gone 200 milliseconds since you typed something before, it will actually patch, send a fetch data with a patch and with the ID of what we want to update. And here you see that parent node ID and then the text value over here that I will patch. And when I actually get the response back, I only will get the response of what have changed here. So I will just do a fetch notes again to get all the note information when I've done everything up here. And maybe if I like, I can actually remove this because I don't have any other party working on the same data. But to be sure that I have the latest data, I will do a fetch after I do a change. And the same up here, if I do a delete, again, I have this funky way of getting the ID, and I send the delete to the backend, and then I fetch the notes. So if we look at this, how does then the backend look for this? It's pretty simple as well. I have a LowDB, which is a JSON database on disk. So the only thing I have in this DB here, you see I have a notes array with a couple of notes. It's not much to it, but this library LowDB will help me to work with the database. I will create this db.json and I put in that adapter here. So this is LowDB setup. I have a function to create UUIDs, and this I have copied from the internet somewhere. So I'm not sure if that is a actual standard or if it's just something wacky somebody came up with. The getter function is very simple. It writes 200, calls the database, gets all the nodes, stringifies those, and sends them back to the user. We have the post function. It just writes 201 created, and then it will get the nodes database or the nodes table of the database, or container I think it's called in NoSQL databases. I will push a UUID and the text over to that database and get the value result here, and then I will write the database so it actually does the updates to the database. I will stringify the result and send that back. In a case of a patch, I will send the 200 that I have patched it. I take the notes, find the actual ID, assign the text, and get the value of that and write the database. Here I can actually see if I got the result and send an error message, but I haven't handled that. It will, in my case, work because I only send in valid IDs, but it can actually be the case that I don't have valid IDs. And if I want to actually make this robust, I will create a test case for that and actually write some code for it. So we'll return that result over here. And lastly, I have this function for delete. And you see here that I don't have the actual word delete, because that's a reserved word in JavaScript. So I can't use delete. And the Sapper folks have actually seen that this is an issue, so they have chosen to shorten the word to del, because that is commonly used as delete as well. So we have the del function, and here I will return the results 204, no response, so it actually will not send any data back, and that's the common thing that you do when you delete something if you don't have any errors. And then I will just remove something from my notes, write the database, and then end with no data back. So this was what I prepared for you today. And now we have gone through the Svelte and Sapper setup, what you get out of the box with Sapper when you create a sample project. We have looked at the blogging part. We have talked a little bit about service worker and components, and we have also looked at the little application I wrote to make a notes application to create, update, and delete posts in Sapper. I think Sapper is a really fascinating framework with a lot of different functionality in one box, so you actually get something that you can get up and running fast without getting any extra data that you don't need. And it also has a good performance score because it uses Svelte and actually compiles to JavaScript that performs well and is small. So I think this is a very interesting starting point when you're creating a new project. And at the moment I don't have any project that I want to tackle at work or in my spare times. I have a lot of other things that I need to work on. But if I had something that I wanted to actually get a stab on, and actually if I had something that I actually wanted to build, I think Sapper would be the next thing I would try. What do you think? I hope that you found this video interesting. I hope that you learned something today. If you have any questions about Sapper or Svelte, please leave them down in the comment section. If you like this video, give it a like, share it with your friends and colleagues. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do that. And I really hope to see you in the next video.